All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Maddie here, and today is Tuesday. We haven't done a tier list in quite some time, and of course, it is technically a new season, so let's do our new meta tier list today. We've got 20 of the most common decks, the most popular decks, the best decks in Pokemon Pocket. Right now, we're going to be ranking them here on the tier list. Now, as always, timestamps down below if you guys, of course, want to navigate through the video or get the energy types for all of the decks. That is where that information is going to be. But also, keep in mind that not every deck is going to be on this tier list. Like, you know, if it's not here, it just isn't seeing play or isn't seeing success. So as the weeks go on, maybe we'll add some more decks to the tier list. But for right now, after this first weekend of our 300+ player tournament, the new ranked season, this is going to be my opinions about basically every meta viable deck currently in this new season. So the other thing to keep in mind is that, like, this isn't for tournaments or ranked specifically. There are some differences between the two. I'll talk about them when I get to like specific decks, but for the most part, like the same decks in tournaments are the same decks in ranked mode. So just kind of keep that in mind for sure. And again, we've only had like less than a week of this new season. So I have played a bunch of ranked battles, and of course we had our tournament. So that's kind of where my opinions and all of the data will be coming from. Don't forget to like and subscribe, by the way. Big shout out to everybody. By the way, our tournament this weekend, the third tournament, is open for registration. I would highly recommend that you guys go and register. It's going to be a lot of fun. This past weekend was an incredible time, so I would definitely recommend that you guys go and play again. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. Also, we did Meta Monday yesterday if you're curious about the results of this past weekend's tournament. Okay, we're just going to go in order here. Basically, we got 20 decks here. Some are going to be better than others. We're just going to go in order, no particular order. We're keeping the tier list simple this week: S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, and D tier. I haven't really changed anything, and I haven't really planned this out, so we're just kind of going on the fly. First off, let's talk about Buzzwole, right? So again, we've kind of condensed Buzzwole just into a single archetype. I think at this point, most people play Pheromosa and Cyrus with Buzzwole and Celesteela. And I think that Buzzwole's like a fine deck. It definitely has dramatically fallen off in play recently. And to me, that's quite a bit sad. Now, I don't think Buzzwole is a bad deck whatsoever. I think that the main reason why many people haven't played Buzzwole over the last couple of months is mainly just because its matchups into Suicune and Greninja are quite poor. And quite frankly, both of those decks operate very, very similarly. Suicune and Greninja kind of does the same thing that Buzzwole does. It damages the bench. It controls which target it wants to attack. They both have a lot of sustain. They both have, of course, high HP Pokemon. The difference with Suicune is that it just draws way more cards, right? And whenever you're drawing way more cards, then you're just going to be at an advantage. So I think that Buzzwole has kind of gotten taken over in terms of its position in the metagame against Suicune and Greninja. Now, the other thing about Buzzwole is that it traditionally actually has very good matchups into Giratina, Darkrai, and into Guzzlord. That is sort of the unique aspect of Buzzwole, so you would think that it's pretty good. But to be fair, Flareon is kind of one of the other top most played decks in the format right now. And then, of course, we have Charizard, which might be rising back up in play as well, which is on the tier list. So in general, when you take a look at Buzzwole, just the overwhelming amount of Suicune in the metagame has really kind of pushed Buzzwole out. Now, I don't think Buzzwole's a bad deck, but I really can't justify putting it in A or S tier. So I'm going to be putting Buzzwole like B tier. I really feel like right now it's like a high B tier deck. And it does sort of, I do need to explain that any decks that go into the B tier doesn't mean that they're bad. It just means that they're not like incredibly powerful currently in the metagame. Again, like the B tier is not for bad decks. It's just sort of the middle of the road decks. Every deck on our tier list today is going to be a quality deck, so the B tier really isn't that bad of a placement. But yeah, Buzzwole to me is definitely like a quintessential high B tier deck, and has been really ever since Suicune and Greninja started to dominate the metagame. Now, speaking of Suicune and Greninja, and I do realize that we also have Suicune and Giratina. I forgot to exclude one of these on the tier list. Basically, everyone playing Suicune and Greninja is playing Giratina as well, so I'm not going to rank both of these decks. We're just going to put them, this one down here. We're just not going to rank this one. We'll rank Suicune and Greninja as this deck list here. So here we go. Suicune and Greninja. What's going on with Suicune and Greninja? Well, I mean, kind of a lot of the same, quite frankly. I have a lot of opinions about Suicune and Greninja in the current metagame. One thing is for sure is that it is still by far the most played deck, and not only that, it is winning more than any other deck list, right? So, had a phenomenal performance this past weekend. Wasn't like as dominant as we've seen in like previous weeks for Suicune, but was definitely still the most played deck, and by extension, probably the best deck in the game. It won our tournament, and it also got third place at our tournament. And then I think there was 5 total decks in top 16 that were playing Suicune Greninja. So here's the thing. I think that there's a lot of opportunity to counterplay Suicune and Greninja. I just think most people aren't doing it. And by that, I mean they don't know exactly what to do. I might have to make a new counter meta deck video just because most people right now are playing decks that they think are strong into Suicune and Greninja, but they're really not. And I think that's reflected by the tournament data that we have. So things like Oricorio, not good into Suicune and Greninja, quite frankly. Giratina Darkrai, also not that good into Suicune and Greninja anymore. They have started to include Oricorio. I thought about splitting both of those decks up on the tier list to have them separated, but to be fair, I think that it's mostly the same archetype. The one Oricorio really does kind of change things when you're playing Suicune. It just sort of buys time a couple of turns for them to just ping you with Greninja and sit with Oricorio when they active, and then they can Mars you if you don't have Repel or Sabrina in your hand, then you're probably just going to lose the game. So the one Oricorio does make Suicune and Greninja a little bit less consistent, but does dramatically improve the Giratina Darkrai matchup. And if you take a look at all of the other stuff that's seeing play, you know, Guzzlord has fallen off pretty dramatically. Excuse me, I need to take a drink of water, geez. We're leaving it in. What is it? Guzzlord has, you know, kind of decreased in play. Less than 7% meta share. It was actually the 4th most played deck at our tournament this weekend. Guzzlord still does fairly well into Suicune, but it's not like a super great matchup. Flareon has actually started to include Jolteon, and we do have that split out on our tier list today. So the Jolteon version of Flareon seemingly does have a fairly good matchup. Things like Decidueye, of course, and then what's the other ones? In Charizard, right? So the new Charizard Cleffa deck seemingly has had a really good win rate into Suicune specifically. So it's an interesting world. There are some lightning decks that are good against Suicune, but if you're playing Oricorio, like you're probably just going to lose, quite frankly, because they have so much healing and they're just going to play Greninja and then you're just going to lose the game. So to beat Suicune, you really have to play like a bunch of Hand Disruption or a bunch of Gusting, like Repels or Sabrinas to keep Suicune out of the active spot. And then you also have to play like either, you know, a deck list that has a really strong Pokemon that can survive on its own in the active spot, or you're playing really aggressive, fast-paced decks like some lightning-type cards like Tapu Koko. So Tapu Koko is a really good answer to Suicune, but a lot of the Oricorio stuff going around really isn't that strong. Zeraora, yes, theoretically it can 2-hit KO Suicune. It can attack on your second turn going first, but they play Irrited, they play Giant Cape. Zeraora really isn't that. It's not terrible, but it's just not like a significant counterplay to Suicune. So anyway, that's enough of that tangent. Suicune and Greninja, it's the #1 deck in the game by far. In fact, I don't know if we'll see another deck in S tier. I'm not going to lie. I think that Suicune Greninja isn't being counterplayed nearly as much as it probably should. For whatever the reason, people are counterplaying like Giratina Darkrai, and I think that they think they're counterplaying Suicune. So maybe we'll have to inform people a little bit more in a recent video. But yeah, Suicune Greninja got first place. It was, you know, by far the most successful deck in day 1, and technically it was the most successful deck in day 2. Not from a win rate perspective, but it did win the tournament, right? So there we go. Suicune Greninja is still probably the best deck for ranked as well. You got to keep in mind that sure, there's a lot of like lightning decks on the ladder for ranked. There's some Guzzlord and stuff, but if you're playing Suicune Greninja and you play this deck properly, you're gonna have a fairly easy time, honestly, in ranked. So there we go. It's going into the S tier. Next up is going to be Snorlax and Darkrai. So this is like the daycare deck. I have actually replaced just sort of the standard Arceus Darkrai deck on the tier list, just because I think most people are playing the Snorlax version. Now, the Snorlax stuff is very, very interesting. One thing that people might not know is that Snorlax has a phenomenal win rate into Giratina Darkrai. Again, you know, sure, right? But it loses pretty dramatically to Suicune. So, you know, again, in that same vein, it's like, what are we doing? Are we countering Giratina Darkrai, or are we just letting Suicune dominate the metagame? Who knows? I like this deck list. I really do. It's creative. It's fun. Snorlax is a really funny Pokemon. You can just play it like Turbo Arceus or Turbo Darkrai, which theoretically can give you the opportunity to beat Suicune, but yeah, at least this weekend, Snorlax performed very, very poorly into Suicune. It basically didn't win a single game, but it basically beat Giratina Darkrai in every single game, right? So again, it really just goes back to the fact that people are like playing decks that are strong into Giratina Darkrai, even though Suicune is like 30% of the meta share, and is beating all of these decks for whatever the reason. So Snorlax and Darkrai are a really fun deck list. It actually did fairly well. Not many people are playing it. I kind of feel like a high B tier, maybe low A tier spot for my guy Snorlax here. I'm really on the fence about it. We have to be a little bit generous because, you know, there is a clear separation between S tier here and then probably the A tier. I think that Snorlax Darkrai might squeeze into the A tier. It's probably going to be like a middle to low A tier deck, but I definitely feel like its matchups into most things, other than, of course, because again, into Oricorio, it's actually quite good with Darkrai and Snorlax in the active. Into basically most things in the metagame other than Suicune, it's pretty good. So a deck that loses pretty heavily to Suicune, I guess, can go into the A tier. I don't know. It really just depends on if you're hitting Suicune or not, and chances are you probably are. But anyway, yeah, let's put it like right here at A tier. It's probably going to go like low A tier. Next up is the grass type decks. So these are going to be Exeggutor and Decidueye. So what's interesting is that the top placing Exeggutor deck from our tournament this past weekend was a bit of a different one. It wasn't playing Exeggutor EX, it was playing like Leafeon, and it was playing Exeggutor, and I think it was playing something else, I forget. So an interesting deck for sure. Alolan Exeggutor, I think to me, is one of the few decks that, doesn't really care what it goes up against, right? If Alolan Exeggutor draws properly and it gets will and it gets set up, like, you're just going to die to 150. You're just going to get KO'd. Now, there are ways around that. Like, Suicune does play Giant Cape. Some Suicune decks are playing 2 Giant Capes, like the 3rd place list from this past weekend. I don't think Exeggutor is, like, that real of a deck. Like, I'm not going to lie. Again, we're looking at this like, cool, like, I can beat Giratina Darkrai. Like, that's fun. I can beat the Lightning decks. Like, that's fun. But, like, what about Suicune? Are we not trying to beat Suicune? Is that not the deck that everybody is really annoyed about? I don't know. I mean, I'm just sort of spitballing here, but I genuinely feel like we should probably be playing decks that are good into Suicune. That's just me. Anyway, Alolan Exeggutor, I think, also gets like a B tier nod. I'm going to actually put it below Buzzwole just for like inconsistency reasons, but I like the deck. It's actually not like a full meme deck. Kind of funny. It's a will deck, right? So any decks that rely on will to be consistent are just inherently not consistent, and I think that's kind of like an inherent problem. Again, gonna be good in a Giratina Darkrai, so it does have that going for it. But anyway, yeah, we're gonna put it right there, like into the B tier below Buzzwole. And Decidueye, I feel kind of similarly about. Now, at least we're talking about a deck here that theoretically is good into Suicune, so that's pretty good. Decidueye has that going for it. I think that the advantage for Decidueye is that not only can it kind of survive in the active, it's good into Giratina Darkrai, it's good into Suicune, but the main downside here is that Fire is becoming exceedingly more popular, and I do think that the Charizard deck that got 2nd place at our tournament is going to sort of replace Decidueye in the metagame, and I don't think that that's that bad of a thing. Of course, Charizard's probably going to beat Decidueye in the head-to-head matchup. Quite frankly, they're both basically the exact same deck. One's just Fire and Charizard, one's just Grass and Decidueye. But either way, I think that they both operate very similarly. The thing about Decidueye is that it's, again, inherently inconsistent, and it just ends up losing to just not drawing the cards, right? So anybody that's played Decidueye in the ladder, most of your games have come down to whether or not you just draw your Pokemon or not, and that inherently doesn't feel that good. Some of the Lightning decks that are playing Silvally also can handle you pretty well. Theoretically, Dragonite, although Dragonite's not seeing a ton of play, can also handle Decidueye. So if Flareon as well does exist, there's a lot of things going around with the Decidueye that are interesting, but at least it does have the merit of being strong into Suicune and some of the other most popular decks. So I'm also going to put it B tier. I'm actually just going to put it above Buzzwole. I think all 3 of these decks here in the grass type decks are just kind of B tier decks. The grass type is fine. It's just like, there's too much fire, and all of these decks are either like, it's tough, right? Because the decks here that are good into Suicune are inconsistent, and then the deck that is consistent, which is Buzzwole, is weak into Suicune and Greninja, so it's like a really weird, like, mixed bag of grass type right now. But anyway, they are all in the metagame, so we do have like 3 distinct different grass type deck options, which is cool, because for a while it really was just Buzzwole, but yeah, I think they're all definitely like B tier. Now let's talk about Giratina Darkrai. So Giratina and Darkrai actually struggled pretty heavily at our tournament this weekend, and I think that this is going to be like a clear discrepancy between ranked battles and tournament battle, like in tournament gameplay. I think that Giratina Darkrai is still exceedingly strong. Sure, it's struggling a bit more because a lot of Suicunes are playing Oricorio, and in general, there's a lot of Oricorio in the format right now. The kind of new-aged Lightning type decks, and by the way, like when we get to the Lightning decks, it's going to get a little bit confusing because there's so many of them and so many different variations, but a lot of the Lightning decks right now, we're playing Shining Revelry Pikachu that hits for 150, and they're playing Oricorio, so it kind of creates this really awkward dynamic where that deck list theoretically I think is seeing played as a Suicune counterplay, but it's not. It's just a deck that beats Giratina Darkrai again for whatever the reason, and you're gonna find yourself losing to Suicune more often than not. So Giratina Darkrai really kind of has gotten the short end of the stick for whatever the reason. It just can't catch a break. It's like everybody finally caught on to Giratina Darkrai, but they did it in a way that they didn't mean to. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think anybody's playing these decks to beat Giratina Darkrai. It is kind of declining in play as well. It was 15% of the meta share, which is still a lot, but it was like literally half as much as Suicune and Greninja, and had a much worse time in Swiss. Again, if we take a look at all these decks, like Flareon rising up in play a lot, Guzzlord still seeing play, Shining Revelry, Pikachu still seeing play, Oricorio still seeing a lot more play. Charizard as well is probably going to start seeing more play. These are all things that beat Giratina Darkrai, which is kind of crazy. That all being said, which is hilarious, I still think Giratina Darkrai is an A-tier deck. Specifically just because even though all of those decks theoretically beat Giratina Darkrai, they don't beat Giratina Darkrai that much of the time, right? So if you really know how to play the deck, and if you're building Giratina Darkrai properly, the other thing to keep in mind is that Giratina and Darkrai can, I've said that so many times, Darktina, whatever you want to call the deck, it can kind of change its list depending on its matchups pretty easily. You can play a second PCL, you can play a second Repel, you can do a lot of things. You can just kind of swap around the different cards of your deck for the common matchups in the metagame. That's the advantage to Giratina Darkrai, and I still think it's a quality deck. Again, it did place fairly well. It had a couple of top 16s in our tournament. I think the highest was like in top 8. So I like Giratina Darkrai. I just think that it has fallen off dramatically. Definitely not like driving the metagame, and it is being counterplayed very heavily for whatever the reason. So that's why it's not going into the S tier. Otherwise, it probably would be an S tier deck. But again, every deck in the game seemingly is here to counter Giratina Darkrai. So I don't know. Maybe that'll shift. Maybe we'll start, trying to counter Suicune. But for now, Giratina Darkrai definitely taking a pretty massive dip. I do think it's probably still better than Snorlax. Although Snorlax does beat Giratina Darkrai, I think it's still a better deck list. So there we go. Next up is going to be Espeon Sylveon. Oh man, oh man. How quickly Espeon Sylveon fell off, right? Again, just the inclusion of Suicune and Greninja completely dropped Espeon off the face of the earth, right? Because it's tough. Suicune Greninja does beat Espeon Sylveon, which is tough. But in the same vein, a lot of the most played decks that are seeing play to beat Suicune are also decks that beat Espeon Sylveon. So if you take a look at the overall metagame, whether it's Suicune, Greninja, Giratina Darkrai, Guzzlord, Flareon, any of the Darkrai decks, like they all do really, really well into Espeon. It kind of feels really bad for me to do this, but quite frankly, given the results that we've had recently, I'm honestly going to put Espeon Sylveon into the D tier, which is crazy because this is not a bad deck. This is actually a really strong deck. It was actually in the S tier a couple of weeks ago. But just the way that the metagame has shifted, right? Completely has shifted away from Espeon Sylveon. It is a deck that I would definitely not recommend you play. It is just poorly positioned against basically everything in the entire game right now that people are playing. And that doesn't feel good. That just doesn't sit right with me, but it's just the case. Again, this is not a bad deck. It's just so extremely poorly positioned that I cannot recommend that you play it. It's going to go down into the D tier. For reference, Espeon Sylveon went 6-16 at our tournament, and that is a 27% win rate. By far, like the lowest, honestly. So there we go. Going into the D tier. Crazy. Next up, though, let's get into some of the lightning decks. We have like 5 or 6 of them. Again, it's kind of tough to put them on the tier list, so I tried to break them out in terms of like their core packages, because there are some uniqueness. There is some unique aspects of all of the lightning decks, but for the most part, they are what they are, right? So let's talk about Arceus and Pichu, right? So this is traditionally like Turbo Arceus. However, the highest placing Arceus Pichu deck from our tournament was actually like a weird like Oricorio sustain deck with Shaman and Irida playing water and lightning energies. It was a really unique deck list. Again, a deck that for whatever the reason gets absolutely mopped by Suicune, but was good against like Giratina Darkrai and Guzzlord and things like that. So I don't know what's going on there. But traditional Turbo Arceus is still fine. I think that Arceus is a little bit unique right now. Again, it definitely isn't doing well into Suicune, but it's not a bad deck. I'm going to go ahead and put it like into the B tier. It has some advantages. The pacing can be good. Unfortunately, we're not 1-KOing Suicune, so there are a lot of times where, we go second, we get that Arceus turn 2, and maybe we just have enough pace to win the game, but most of the time, it's really not working that well. Baby Pokemon, in general, are a bit of a liability into Suicune, especially if they don't get up and running really quickly. Yeah, that's kind of just how I feel about Turbo Arceus. I think it's fine. Again, you can build that variant that was playing Iridas and Shaman, and you can beat Giratina Darkrai all of the time, just with the the Oricorios. But I don't really feel as confident in this deck as I have maybe previously. So that's where it's gonna go. It's just gonna go right there. Again, I think it's good. I think it's a good. Maybe we put it like low B tier, low A tier. It's kind of tough, right? There's just so many lightning decks. It's like, how do we really categorize them all? It depends, man. It really does depend. The Oricorios, again, they are going to help you into the Charizard, which is probably going to see some more play. You know, the daycare deck as well. Like it also would beat the daycare deck. I'll put it like in the A tier, just because, like, again, we are factoring in the possibility of playing it like the Shaman, you know, Irida version, just because, you know, it was the most recent highest placing, even though it's not a traditional Turbo Arceus deck, but it is going to count towards this archetype, right? So whatever. We'll put it like low A tier. I think it's probably fine. Next up is going to be Flareon and Jolteon, or Flareon Pichu. So I call this like Heat Lightning, or the Fire and Lightning deck. It's Flareon with the lightning stuff thrown in. So I do think that this is an upgrade to the traditional just fire type Flareon matchup. Again, it's really just about like hedging your bets against which decks you're playing, right? This is, of course, a bit of a gamble deck, right? We're flipping coins with Jolteon. It can feel bad if you flip all tails, 100%, right? But the thing is that Jolteon does give this deck a distinct advantage into some of the most popular decks in the game. When you take a look at things like any of the grass type decks, or against, you know, things like Arceus or Darkrai, or, you know, Giratina Darkrai, like Flareon is going to be able to handle those matchups most of the time, just because of the nature of Flareon and its ability to 1-hit KO and stay above like 140 HP pretty consistently. So that's what I do like about Flareon. I think that it uniquely is good against a lot of these decks here in A and B tier. But Flareon itself struggled with Suicune. So the Jolteon here is really just there to kind of give us a little bit of an extra buffer, or just a little bit of extra spice in there that's going to theoretically improve our Suicune matchup. And I do think it actually did that pretty well. This is a deck that people slept on. I made a video on it Friday. People played it on the weekend. We had 2 players, I think, in top 4, or 4th and 5th place, were both playing Jolteon and Flareon. It's a good deck. It is a high roll deck, so, you know, if you hop on the ranked ladder and you play 5 games, you might lose all 5, right? But you're just as likely to win all 5. A very streaky deck, a very, you know, gamble-based high roll deck, which Flareon was anyway, but now we're just playing in a little bit of a different sort of aspect of it. The really big thing about this deck, in my mind, that I think puts it above normal Flareon is that you can attack on your second turn going first. That's not something Flareon could do previously. Like, going first, if you lead Pichu, you can just attack turn 2 with Jolteon, and then that's a lot of pressure from there, especially if you're flipping enough coins, and a lot of decks just can't really deal with that, especially if we're able to KO like a Froakie or a Suicune in the active spot, right? That's the distinct advantage here, is being able to attack on that second turn going first. And because the deck is so much better going first, and being able to hit for weakness on the water type Pokemon, I think that this does include like an A tier mention. I'm going to put it right up here. I'm just going to put it above Giratina Darkrai. It was actually one of the best performing decks this weekend, and I think it really is sort of the top like new inclusion to the metagame here into the A tier. So we're gonna put it like high A tier. I think it's a really, really good quality deck, and I think that I'm actually really excited about that, quite frankly, just because of how, you know, this metagame is sort of developing. Like, if you take a look at this tier list as opposed to like the tier list we made 2 or 3 weeks ago, there are actually a lot of things that are different. Like, honestly, there really are. So I understand Suicune's still S tier. I get it. Haha, same meta, whatever. But there's a lot of things changing about the metagame. It just comes down to whether or not people actually choose to beat Suicune or not. Like, I just don't know. People are going to play what they want to play. I would recommend you play decks that are strong into Suicune. So it is what it is. Flareon, I would say an improvement. Honestly, I really would. Now let's talk about Charizard, because Charizard is really, really interesting. Charizard's probably the #1 example of something that I would not recommend you play in ranked mode, but I would recommend kind of that you play it in tournaments, right? Like, the thing with Charizard is that, or at least in ranked mode right now, there's a lot of people playing Oricorio and Lightning type decks. Again, because people think they're countering Suicune. They're not. So I would recommend, honestly, or what I would hope for, is for all of those people playing Oricorio Lightning decks on the ranked ladder to just stop playing those decks and just like swap to Charizard or something that is actually good into Suicune. That way, the Oricorio stuff actually becomes viable and Suicune becomes less viable, right? Like, in a perfect world, people just stop doing that and they play Charizard, because this Charizard deck is specifically really good into Suicune Greninja and Giratina Darkrai. It's Charizard, right? So it's solo Charizard in the active. You're playing double Lily. This is, again, a high roll deck. Like, if you don't draw Charizard, you're going to lose. But the idea here is that we're basically just 1-hit KOing Suicune and everything in most decks. And then it's just really difficult to deal with it. Suicune with a full bench is only doing like 80 damage to Charizard. So in a world where Charizard is the only Pokemon in the active spot, with a Lily, you're surviving 2 hits from Suicunes, right? Which does matter. So the only times we really lose against Suicune is if we just don't draw any Pokemon, which of course does happen sometimes. Or what I guess can happen is if we don't get Charizard up enough or quick enough until like turn 3 or 4. My hair is insane right now. If Charizard takes too long to come out, they can set up Giratina if they do lead Giratina, and that can make things a a little bit difficult. They can 2 KO in that sense. In general, I think Charizard's a really strong counter meta pick right now. But again, in ranked battles, I wouldn't recommend it because like you're going to hit a bunch of Oricorio and a bunch of these lightning type decks. And the funny thing about this Charizard is that it has completely like hedged its bets. It's like, I'm going to beat Suicune, Greninja, Giratina, Darkrai, but if I play like anything else, like Guzzlord, any of the Oricorio decks, like I'm probably going to lose. Like it's just going to be like a fat L, and I'm going to take that, and I'm going to take that to the bank. And I actually, I have a lot of respect for that. I really do. And I think that we need that type of confidence right now in the metagame. So shout out to Charizard. Now, are we going to put it in the S tier? It did get second place. In fact, we had 2 different Charizard players. The only 2 people playing this list got top 8 at our tournament. It was one tournament. It's one weekend. But again, Charizard has always been like that. It's just a deck that, you know, you got to hit the right matchups and you got to draw properly, but nothing can really beat it if that happens, or you know what I mean? So we saw this Charizard go 7-0 against Suicune, and then inevitably did brick against Suicune in the finals, which was unfortunate to see, I'm not going to lie. But I think it proved its point that it is a significant counter meta option. I'm going to put it in the A tier. I am. You know, why not? You know, screw it. We're going to put it in the A tier. I'm not going to put it high A tier. I'm just going to put it like right here, like middle of the road A tier. I think it's a totally fine deck. Like that's my opinion about it. Definitely not something that might go well for everybody, but something that in a tournament can definitely knock off Suicune. So I would recommend more people play Charizard, both in ranked, but in tournaments, it's tough because like I'm recommending you play it in ranked, but I'm recommending also that it's not very good in ranked. So if everybody theoretically were to just immediately swap from Oricorio to Charizard, that would be cool. But I don't think people are going to do that. So in tournaments, sure, go ahead, go for it. Dodge those Oricorios, stomp the Suicunes, but in ranked battles, probably not the best option for you. Maybe though, I mean, who knows, right? That's all just my opinions. Next up, Silvally Giratina. So Silvally Giratina, it was sort of my #1 choice early on the season in ranked battles. I ended up swapping from it just because every deck started to run Rocky Helmet, which was like really annoying because all my games would end in ties. Like I didn't lose many games, but I was tying like every other game. And if you're playing ranked mode, ties, you know, stop your win streak. So that just doesn't feel very good. This is also probably one of the more difficult decks to play. Like you're immediately making important decisions from the first turn, and that can be very, very tough. Now, I actually feel like this deck in ranked is probably still a good choice just because there's a lot of Oricorio and, you know, lightning decks running around. Solo Silvally in the active can actually just beat Suicune, and it also can beat a lot of the lightning decks. So in that sense, I really do like this deck. Honestly, I don't know what to really rank it. Like I kind of want to put B tier, but it did perform very poorly in the tournament, mainly just because, again, I feel like most people probably don't have a lot of experience playing this deck. And also it's probably not that good into like Suicune and Darkrai specifically. Like the thing is, like, it's not bad into those matchups. It's just you have to know how to play them. And even then, I would say it's about a 50-50. Like the whole reason I played this deck originally is because I knew that I had the ability to beat Suicune and I had the ability to beat Giratina Darkrai, but I did not, or I would specifically do very well against a lot of the like counter meta lightning decks, right? So that was like it. Like, so that was the reason why I played it. But right now, like, especially in tournaments, I just don't feel like it's probably worth doing, just because if you're not at a really high rank in ranked battles, like, you're probably not going to hit, like, you're going to hit a wide variety of stuff, right? You're going to hit Decidueyes, you're going to hit Charizards, you're going to hit, like, a bunch of random stuff like Flareon. You're going to hit a bunch of stuff that you probably don't want to hit. So I'm going to just put this in the C tier, just because, like, I would honestly recommend for most people not to play this deck. Not that I really think it's a C tier deck, but in terms of, like, you know, what I would recommend, like, I would recommend probably all of these decks above it, just purely based off of it's way more simple to play most of these decks than Silvally Giratina. I do think there's a lot of merit here. Like, Silvally Giratina, like, with double red, double Rocky Helmet, just Silvally in general with that combo is really good. Like, it's really nice to be able to just sort of KO. What's annoying, though, is that Suicune does play Giant Cape and they play double Irida. Like, it just doesn't feel great. Anyway, I'm going to put this in the C tier. I am. But I am going to put Silvally Zeraora like top of B tier. In fact, I might actually also just put this in the A tier. Silvally Zeraora is a really interesting deck because, one, specifically, it's much more easy to play than Silvally Giratina. And in the same vein, I feel like it is one of the few decks that specifically is fairly good into Suicune Greninja. Like, I think that's sort of the idea with it. Maybe that's not even the case. I don't really know. I guess if I take a look at the data, like, was anybody playing this deck? I kind of wonder. I don't even know if anybody was playing this deck. Yeah, a couple people played it. Let's take a look at the matchups, right? So It went 0-2 against Giratina Darkrai, which is, I guess, to be fair. And the few people that played it didn't even hit any Suicune. So, like, that's kind of the difficult part about this deck is that I think it does kind of struggle against Giratina Darkrai. That's why, like, Lightning is in a weird spot, right? There are specific cards that are really good into Suicune, but all of the cards that are good into Suicune are bad into Giratina Darkrai, and then a lot of the cards that are good into Giratina Darkrai are bad into Suicune. And that's kind of where the Lightning decks are right now, you know, quite frankly. And it feels kind of bad to, like, hedge your bets. Again, Silvally Zeraora, probably a pretty distinct counter meta deck against Suicune, but you're going to hit a lot of other stuff that you probably don't love to hit. And since we're not playing Oricorio, or most decks aren't playing Oricorio, you're just going to be at a bit of a disadvantage against a lot of the other decks. So we're going to put this, like, high B tier, I think. Is probably where this, I don't know. Now let's put it A tier. Why not? I think that this is like one of the other Lightning decks. All of the Lightning decks are quality. They really are. Like, they're not bad at all. But we're going to go ahead. We're going to put it right there, like low A tier, I think. Well, maybe we'll just actually put it above Arceus. That's kind of how I feel. There's a lot of A tier decks. That's sort of my opinion about this season right now, is that there's a lot of, like, really good viable decks. And then there's Suicune, right? And Suicune definitely has separated itself from all of those decks. So that's probably what the tier list is going to look like. It's going to be a really awkward curve where we have a lot of A tier and B tier, but, like, probably nothing else in, like, S tier, you know what I mean? If it's on the tier list, like, it's pretty unlikely that it goes in C or D tier, but people still play bad decks sometimes, you know what I mean? Let's talk about normal Flareon. So I do think normal Flareon is still fine, but it's distinctly not as good into Suicune. It's interesting because, like, early last season, people really did kind of feel like, you know, Flareon was good into Suicune, and, like, I kind of felt that way as well, but I think Suicune just sort of developed in a way. I think people started to build the deck, and they started to play Giratina more. Like, more and more things sort of developed in the metagame that made that matchup for Flareon just not as good. And the thing about Flareon is it does sort of really depend on benching a lot of Pokemon most of the time. Yes, Suicune and Greninja are hitting for weakness on you, which also feels bad. The baby Pokemon are a liability to Greninja. So I think at the beginning, you know, Flareon had a pretty decent, like, 50-50 against Suicune, but it ended up kind of dipping. It's now more so like a 45-50, which is why I think the Jolteon stuff is really, really nice. But just straight fire Flareon. Again, I think that it's good against most other things in the game, but unfortunately is struggling into Suicune. So for that reason, it's going to go right here into the B tier. I think, like, high B tier is a good choice for this Flareon deck. I think it's fine. I think it's totally good, but it's definitely not, like, A tier at this point. Like, you can't lose pretty handedly to Suicune and then make that happen. Also, the data here is a little bit tough. I'm kind of going from a gut reaction just because Limitless does condense all of the Flareon decks, whether you're playing Jolteon or not. So we don't really have, like, the specific data. Other than that, all of the highest placing Flareon decks were playing Jolteon, and they had those specific players did well into Suicune, right? So that's sort of how I'm feeling. Theoretically, this is a really good deck. Honestly, like, I really like the Flareon Jolteon, just because in theory, we're beating Giratina Darkrai and we're beating Suicune. And to me, that seems fun. Like, I like that. You know what I mean? Maybe not. Maybe it falls off. Maybe whatever. You know, it's tough to say. But anyway, I'm going to be putting Flareon and without Jolteon, just fire type, basic Flareon. I'm going to be putting it, like, high B tier. Next up, though, we have our guy Dragonite. So let's talk about Dragonite. I think that man, you know, in general, Dragonite, I think, is a bit of a mixed bag. You know, theoretically speaking, it's a deck that kind of just loses to itself most of the time, but there's such a wide variety in the metagame right now. There's a lot of disruption, hand disruption. There's also a lot of gusting in the format. Like, I think a lot of people are kind of, you know, a lot of the best decks in the game, whether it's Giratina, Darkrai, or Suicune, are playing around some of these high roll decks and the overall inconsistency of it. Suicune a lot of times is playing Mars, and sometimes they're also playing red card, but they're also playing repel and stuff. Like, so, you know, Suicune Greninja can also kind of play a little bit of everything, and it does, because it draws so many cards, it oftentimes does draw into those disruptions pretty early. So you have to get a bit more lucky now with Dragonite and with things like Charizard and Decidueye than you did before, especially like Flareon as well. So it's really tough for me to rank Dragonite. I am probably going to put it right here into the C tier. It's not bad. I think it's probably better than a lot of other decks, but yeah, I think that Dragonite, again, we only have 20 decks on the tier list, right? So it's like being in the top 15 is not bad, right? But yeah, Dragonite, I don't feel as confident to put it in the B tier, so I'm going to put it like in C tier right now. And I feel pretty good about that. Again, I don't have much else to say about Dragonite. Just a lot of gusting, a lot of hand disruption in the format, and I think people are just... People, you know, the Dragonite people are just not really. They're playing high roll on hard mode right now. You know what I mean? That's what it is. So C tier for Dragonite. Feel good about that. Next up, let's talk about a couple more lightning decks to wrap this up in a little bit. So we've got Raikou and Arceus. I think that most people playing Raikou right now are playing Raikou Arceus, and I think that's fine. And then there's Tapu Koko, and like the Tapu Koko decks also are playing Pikachu, so it's a little bit weird. Like the deck lists I pull up here, for example, are just, you know, some of the decks that did well recently at our tournament. Again, the lightning stuff is just like so many stuff, right? You have Silvally, you have Arceus, you have Raikou, you have Pikachu, you have Tapu Koko, you have Oricorio, you have Zeraora. Like that's the package, and any sort of combination that you play all of those cards in, they're probably going to be like pretty good. Now, there are some distinct things here that are takeaways. Raikou specifically is good against Suicune, but it really does kind of lose to everything else in the game, and that doesn't feel very good for Raikou, and I think it's a big reason why Raikou maybe isn't seeing that much play at this point in the metagame. I'm going to be putting Raikou Arceus probably like bottom lower B tier. I just don't think Raikou is that good. I think it really does struggle against basically everything. Theoretically speaking, yes, it's good into Suicune, but Suicune's playing Irida, they're playing Giant Capes, they're going to 2 KO you, and like unless we have like a real way to back up Raikou, which traditionally was with Electrical Cord, we're probably not winning the game, and that just doesn't feel great, right? So it's a little bit tough. We're going to put Raikou Arceus here into the B tier. Still a fine deck, but again, like there's just too much other things in the game. There really is. Like you can beat Suicune, but that's only, you know, 25-30% of the meta share. If you lose to the other 30% or 70%, you're just not going to be a very, very quality deck. You know what I mean? Now, in the other vein here, we have Tapu Koko and Oricorio. A lot of people are playing Tapu Koko either straight with Oricorio, or they're playing it with Pikachu, or they're playing it with, you know, some Zeraora, combination of things like that. Tapu Koko is a bit unique, right? So you have to look at the lightning type decks as like, again, some of them are really good into Giratina Darkrai, some are good into Suicune. Tapu Koko is one of those examples of a card that is specifically very good into Suicune. We're hitting for weakness. If we go second, we basically steamroll through your opponent's active Suicune, and that definitely feels really good. It's a great card. I love it. I love, you know, leading Tapu Koko going second into Suicune. But there again lies the issue of like, okay, Tapu Koko gets absolutely steamrolled by Giratina Darkrai. It can lose to Guzzlord. It can lose to a lot of other stuff in the game, especially if it goes first. So that's the issue with Tapu Koko. Good into Suicune, struggles against most other things. So we have to pair Tapu Koko with something else that is relevant. Most people are playing it with Oricorio to balance out that matchup into things like Giratina Darkrai. But then again, you're playing a bit of a mixed bag, and like half of your deck is for one thing, half of your deck is for the other thing, and it just ends up not being like that good in my mind. Now, Tapu Koko and Oricorio and Pikachu, that whole deck list, that whole archetype did go 50-50, and it was actually the 6th or 5th most played deck this tournament. So again, it was 25 and 25, a totally decent deck, a totally fine deck. I'm going to put it right here at the top of B tier. I think that this is definitely like a fine strategy. I think definitely not a bad deck. Again, it could go like bottom A tier, but for simplicity, we're going to put it right here into the B tier. Totally fine. Again, it's just awkward. We're in a really weird format right now. A lot of people are playing these lightning decks to beat Suicune, I think, but they're really just not beating Suicune that much. It feels tough. Tapu Koko's really good. Oricorio really bad into Suicune. What are we doing? Who knows? Half the time we're winning, half the time we're losing. It's just, it really is like a 50-50 deck in my mind. It's like the most like in the middle deck that I've ever seen. So top of B tier is where we're going here. Silvally and Rampardos. This is a deck that always struggles in tournament, specifically just because it loses to Suicune. Theoretically, though, it can beat like all of the lightning type decks. Like that's where, you know, Silvally Rampardos has always been good in. So in ranked, you might be able to like cheek out some win streaks, especially if like everybody's playing lightning counter meta. But other than that, I think the deck is actually a lot worse than the other Silvally variants. Playing the 2 fossils, playing the 2 Rampardoses, playing the rare candies, you're filling a lot of your deck with things that half the time don't do anything, and they're not supporter cards, which means that if you get Marvs to 1, it is actually fairly likely that you don't have a supporter card. Way more likely than any of the other Silvally decks, right? So that's sort of the downside to Silvally and Rampardos. I think that this is also like a C tier deck in my mind. We're gonna put it like right there, right in C tier, right at the bottom. And I like that. I like it there. I don't have I don't have big opinions about Silvally Rampardos. Not many people are playing it, but the people that do play it really do struggle. It went 5 and 15 at our tournament, which, you know, obviously like isn't very good. But again, 0 and 4 into Suicune, right? So like great. It also went 0 and 2 into Giratina Darkrai. So, you know, like we got a little bit of that going on with this deck. It's sort of countered to the counter meta, but absolutely gets mopped by all of the other top decks. So that's where it's going right there, into the C tier. I mean, you could put it in the D tier, but I really think it's probably anything's better than Espeon Sylveon right now. I say that actually, but Umbreon's probably also going to go into the D tier. This is a deck that, you know, popped up a little bit, but people just sort of counterplayed the deck. They just sort of played around it. And I just don't, I like Umbreon specifically because it does sort of hardwall a couple of matchups. But at the end of the day, you're not beating Suicune. So like, what are we doing, right? That's really what it comes down to. Like, are we able to beat Suicune? No. Then we better be beating like basically everything else in the game, or just a mix of the two. Umbreon, I really, it's tough. Like Flareon decks are like taking over the metagame, but yes, like Espeon, Sylveon, Umbreon, these are cards that really aren't sync play, which is kind of crazy because it was kind of the opposite for a little while. So yeah, I'm also going to be putting Umbreon into the D tier. I will put it above Espeon though. You could put it C tier, but not enough people are playing it. We're just going to put it D tier because I just would recommend that you probably don't play it. So anyway, that's kind of where I feel about that specifically. Next up though is Guzzlord, man. So, you know, Guzzlord is going to be an interesting one. People are probably not going to like my opinions about this, but, you know, Guzzlord to me is a deck that quintessentially is struggling in a lot of different degrees, right? So for whatever the reason, Guzzlord used to see play to beat Suicune. But again, guys, Oricorio is seeing a lot of play in Suicune now, right? And if you look at the data from our past tournament, which again is just one tournament, but it does give you a snapshot of the current metagame, Guzzlord went 15 and 24 into Suicune. Not very good, right? So that's a 38% win rate into Suicune. Also went 8 and 12 into Giratina Darkrai. Went 6 and 10 into the new Flareon decks. Basically lost, had a horrible win rate against all of the most played decks right now. So Guzzlord to me, in my mind, is really something that I would heavily consider not playing anymore. The metagame has shifted. Again, people are going to be like, it's the same metagame. Those people don't understand. Like, stop playing Guzzlord. Stop playing some of these decks here. Like, there's just so many things that are changing. And again, all I can do is let you guys know, and whether you want to listen to me or not, that's fine. You can play Guzzlord. Maybe you still do fine on the ranked ladder. There's still a lot of Oricorio. Again, like Suicune's playing Oricorio. You're just probably not as good as you thought you were, or Guzzlord is not as good as it thought it was. It was sort of like, you got to think back, like, Guzzlord really emerged in that second week of the metagame because it won our last tournament a month ago. Right? So like the only reason Guzzlord is like that relevant even still is because it won our Pocket Mad's #1 tournament a month ago, specifically just because at that time Suicune was kind of losing to it, but that's not the case anymore. Same with Giratina Darkrai, right? So the metagame has shifted. Guzzlord really not very good. It had an awful performance at our tournament. I don't see it a lot on ranked ladder, just not something that I would consider playing, not something that I would recommend that you play either, honestly. 100% honest with you. Now, do I want to put it C tier or B tier? I guess is kind of crazy. Like, it might be disrespectful to put Guzzlord into the C tier. So maybe we give it the B tier nod, although it does kind of mess up the tier list here. So maybe we just put it C tier. I might just heavily disrespect Guzzlord this week. Why not? It really doesn't matter. If it was going B tier, it's going to go like middle or bottom B tier. So that's my recommendation. Also, a lot of grassing play, so keep that in mind. Anyway, there it is, guys. And then we have Suicune Giratina, which is the same as up here. So that's that. I had two of them, so we just didn't really rank that one. They're the same deck. Same deck. Shout out to everybody that played this weekend. Thanks for watching this video. Comment down below what you guys think. Anything that I got wrong, anything that I got right. I would love to hear your opinions. Again, things are changing all over the place. Very, very different metagame than it was, a month ago or even a week ago, 2 weeks ago. Yeah, Suicune's still on top, but to be fair, I'm telling you, I'm giving you the information. People are just choosing not to beat Suicune. You know what I mean? At this point, there is significant counterplay to Suicune. It's just people don't really want to play it, right? I made the Jolteon Flareon video and people were like, this deck's bad. I'm like, do you want to beat Suicune or not? Like, what do you want from me? I don't know what I can do other than recommend certain things. Here you go. Again, a lot of the decks in A tier are here to beat Suicune. Some of them don't, quite frankly, like Snorlax doesn't, Giratina Darkrai doesn't really, but mainly everything else that's on here is kind of counterplay to Suicune. The other decks like Giratina Darkrai and then Snorlax, these are just strong decks that beat a lot of other stuff. B tier, this is like, the B tier is like not bad decks, but I don't think we're really doing anything too significant playing the B tier decks. C tier and below, just really would not recommend them. Anything A tier, I honestly think has a really good chance of winning a tournament and being like a really, really strong choice. Again, we only ranked 20 decks today. It was still a long video, almost 45 minutes. So let's just wrap this up, guys. But don't forget to register. We do have our third tournament this weekend. We will be running them weekly. So I would definitely recommend it. Taj, our official caster, will be at the Milwaukee Regionals this weekend, so he will not be casting the tournament. But we'll maybe figure that out to get some people, whether it's me or I guess somebody else, to maybe get on the live stream, maybe cast some matches. We'll see. But the tournament is still going on, and I would definitely recommend that you guys go play. The prize pool has been doubled, actually. We have a $200 prize pool this weekend. So if you win the tournament, you get $100. That's kind of crazy. Second place gets 50, third and fourth get $20. Pretty cool, I would say. I mean, $200 is $200. come play Pokemon Pocket this weekend. It's a lot of fun. The tournament went actually a lot quicker than you would think. Like, it was only a couple hours each day, and that is if you even make it into day 2. Starts at noontime on Saturday, October 11th. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Yeah, that's the video, guys. Peace out. Have a good one. We'll see you guys later. Yeah, I don't have anything else to say. I really don't. My camera just went fuzzy, so it's probably time to end the video. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Peace out, guys. Have a good one. We'll see you guys later. Bye.